Deep breaths, Clemson fans. Saturday is over. A new page has been turned, and now it is Clemson getting ready for Appalachian State, home opener, night game in the Valley. Better days are ahead, but we're going to look back and talk about last Saturday's debacle against the Georgia Bulldogs, but we're also going to tell you why good things are coming for this Clemson Tigers team. So sit back, relax, turn the volume up, and enjoy this episode of Around the Paw. I'm Garrett Mitchell, along with Clifton Kennedy and Griffin Barfield. And guys, I tell you what, Saturday was a tough one for Clemson fans everywhere. And Griffin and Cliff, you regrettably were both there to see it in person while I was sitting at home on my couch watching on TV. But whether I was here at my house or you were both in Mercedes-Benz Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, didn't make what we saw any easier as Clemson Tigers.
Nope. And, Cliff and I had boots on the ground in Atlanta. It was fun for the first half. It was fun for the first time being able to go on the field, see the players. We were talking about it. We were really enjoying it, and it was awesome to have the experience. But, yeah, I don't really know where to start. And, Garrett, I'm sure we'll navigate through this offense to defense to special teams. But this is an interesting loss. Georgia's a great team. Georgia, I said this last week, they're my national championship pick, and they played for good reason. But if you're Clemson, this isn't considered really a bad loss. They were expected to lose this game, and everything's still on the table. You can go 11-1, run the table, win the ACC, and you will be a top 4 team in the college football playoff. So to me, everything's still on the table. It was a blowout. You look forward to it. Some things were good. Some things are bad. You're going to fix it. You're going to move on. And that starts on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Griffin. It was really fun. I was super excited to be there. First time in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That was so much fun. Great atmosphere. Like you said, the first half was great. Being on the field for before the game started was awesome. First half was great. I thought the defense played as well as they could, considering the position they were put in. It was the first half was fun. That's all I can say. And then the rest was frustrating.
Right. And look, the defense for the first 2 quarters played out of their minds. I don't think you could have asked them for anything more. And I thought for the longest time that this game was really going to mirror the 2021 opener against Georgia and Charlotte. Georgia ultimately won that game 10-3. It was a pick six accounted for the only touchdown. Look, this was a 6-0 game at halftime, and both defenses essentially had their way. But let's start with the Clemson offense, which frankly just did not do a whole lot. And for me, I felt it was a bit inauspicious the very first play of the ball game when Phil Maffa flares out into the right flat. He's wide open. I think Coach Swinney even said in the postgame press conference or in yesterday's press conference that if that pass is complete, it would have gone for 20 or 30 yards on the first play of the game. Instead, Cade Klubnik throws it right at Phil Maffa's feet. And I thought everything from there offensively just went downhill. So it was like a foreshadowing of things to come.
No, I completely agree. And yeah, it was yesterday. He said he was talking to the reporter. He said, hey, the reporter could have thrown it and Maffa would have ran for 30 yards. And then Cade talked about it today, said he shorthanded it, but you can't make those mistakes in games like this. This is a national televised game. Honestly, the 2 best teams on paper, regardless of, A&M and Notre Dame last week in terms of the 2 best teams playing, you just really can't make those mistakes. I would give you the benefit of the doubt if it was your first year under this offense, but if you're Cade Klubnik, you have to be able to make those passes. And he had his good, and I'll get to that. I thought that he had an okay game, made some mistakes, but I thought that those mistakes were more towards the second half where he was kind of playing that hero ball that we saw him begin to play. But again, speaking of Phil Maffa, I don't think he got enough touches. He had 16 carries, and he was the only really consistent spot on offense. And I didn't really understand why he didn't get the amount of touches he did. He got beat in the open field by a Georgia defender, but that was just a great play made on their half. I can get to the wide receivers. Those were a little bit questionable if you asked me. Besides Antonio Williams, he was my X factor last week, and he had an incredible game. But I thought the offensive line was good too. I thought that they were a pretty good bright spot, especially with the type of defense that they were playing. It's very, very optimistic for me to see how Matt Luke has changed this offensive line in just an offseason. But there were question marks all over the field, whether it be quarterback or receiver, especially for me at least.
Yeah, I think the first mistake was made at the coin toss, and when we took the ball, and because if you defer to the second half, it's 6-0, and we get the ball and have a chance to take the lead. But instead, they get the ball, go down, and pretty much put the game away because there was no way we were scoring 13 points at that point. I thought Cade, did as well as he could. I mean, there were some bright spots. And offensive line, man, like you said, dude, how he turned that around in
only one sack. To me, that was just brilliant.
Yeah, the other sack was, I think, his fault. That was on. And I don't really think that was on the offensive line, to be honest with you. I think Cade waited too long to throw the ball away. Yep, and I don't really put that on the offensive line. So if you ask me, the offensive line didn't give up any sacks. That's just how I see it. Defense played great as well as they could, like I said in the beginning. But like you said, Griffin, the receivers, at least the ones they put out there to start, except outside of Antonio Williams, were a disappointment. So I don't really know, I do know where to go from here, and I think they need to start the freshman and see what happens. So that's kind of where I see just a high, 10,000-foot view of the offense.
Attention all Clemson fans. Get ready for a game day like never before. Looking for the best game day parking in Clemson? Golden Gate Parking has got you covered. With over 100 spacious spots for cars, trucks, and RVs, you can tailgate like a champion without worrying about missing kickoff. And to make things even easier, our shuttle service will take you right to the game for just an extra $10 per person. Don't wait until the last minute to reserve your spot. Book now. I will begrudgingly agree with Cliff. I saw some things from Cage, I thought were pretty good, but at the same time, I saw a lot of things that were just the same old, and the same reasons that he was being criticized last year. And I'm going to point to one play in particular that really stood out to me. And I want to see if you guys remember this. I want to say it was late in the first half. You've got a chance to push the ball downfield. You've got a chance to get a little bit of momentum. And one of the things with Cade is that I thought last year he would abandon the pocket too quickly, or he would abandon his reads too quickly. If his first one wasn't open, instead of looking at his second, third, fourth reads, he would check it down too quickly or just get happy feet and take off. Well, I saw that on this play. His first read wasn't open. He still had a clean pocket. He still had plenty of time to go through his progressions, but instead he immediately defaulted to checking the ball down to Phil Maffa, who was double covered 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and it went for a 5-yard loss and derailed the entire drive. To me, that was the Cade Klubnik of last year. That was the Cade Klubnik that Dabo Swinney said had gotten better and had taken the next step in his progression. But to me, that was just more of the same. And so I don't really know what to make of that.
I agree. I remember that play very vividly. I remember looking to the person I was sitting next to. I'm like, what is really going on? But I do think that there were some improvements. First and foremost, I thought that his pocket presence was at the best that I've seen, and that is a very big stretch. I thought that he was the most comfortable in the pocket that he was, especially with last year and him being a little bit frantic. And every time, defenders surrounded the pocket, everyone was like, oh, no, this is what's going to happen. He threw the ball as well. And that's something that we didn't really see. And he was airing it out a lot. He had that 36-yard pass to Antonio Williams in the first quarter, which was huge,
Great
in
catch,
my
by the
opinion.
way.
Yeah. And then the other play that I'm going to call out was it was in the third quarter on the drive we scored the field goal, was the Brenningstool catch when he was rolling out of the pocket, 3 Georgia defenders, taking his time, motioning to Brenningstool what to do, and he was able to make the play. Brenningstool was able to find space and make that great catch. So there was improvement. And you have to remember, this Georgia defense is one of the best. And maybe playing against a different defense for the first time is uncomfortable. I'm giving Cade the benefit of the doubt. But I think in weeks to come, you're going to see a lot more of that improvement that the coaching staff has really been talking about, especially against a team like Appalachian State.
I'll say this: the best, besides the long pass to Williams, that touch pass in the end zone, that little fade route that he threw that Antonio Williams, for whatever reason, didn't see, was probably one of the second best pass he threw. That was right on the money, and I don't know why he didn't track it, but that would have been a touchdown, and I don't think it would have changed the outcome, but it would have definitely switched a little bit of momentum. Oh, yeah. And I think it would have gave him a lot more confident. And you don't know what happens at that point, because if I remember correctly, at that point, was it 20-3, or is that
yes?
We got the field goal.
That was the field goal. So it was 13.
Okay, so it would have been
13-0.
Yeah, it was 13-0. So that would have been 13. That's another time where if he catches that ball, it's 13. It would have been 14 if this is all if. Yeah, it would have been 13-7 at that point. And so, I mean, there's a lot of positives, but there's also the negative, and every Clemson fan and every media person, it feels like, wants to talk about the negative because it's Clemson, and and nobody wants to talk about the positives, I feel like.
Right. And look, we're going to get to some positives, but unfortunately, there is another negative I do want to talk about, cliche as it may be. And we were discussing this before we begin the show tonight, but that's the wide receivers. All offseason, we had heard how improved that wide receiver group was, how they were going to start getting the separation from defenders that we didn't see last year. Frankly, outside of Antonio Williams, the wide receiving core was non-existent. And 2 guys in particular that, to me, I was very, very disappointed in were Adam Randall and Cole Turner. And I can point to one play in particular with Cole Turner. Klubnik throws a deep ball, and it looked like it was there. He had a clean pocket. He let it fly. Cole Turner's running right down the seam on the right side of the field, and for whatever reason, just abandoned the route. Just abandoned it. Stopped. Pulled up like a lame horse on the backstretch of the Kentucky Derby. Why? And look, we heard all offseason, all spring, all summer about how good Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore were. These were 5-star kids. They were day one impact players. They could step right onto the field and make an impact. Where were they? Adam Randall and Cole Turner did nothing. Where were TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco? At that point, what do you have to lose? At least give them a shot. Let's see what they can do against the number 1 team in the country. Anything to see what would work, because who you had on the field outside of Antonio Williams, it just wasn't happening. And furthermore, for that matter, where was Tyler Brown? They never once tried to involve Tyler Brown in the offense, who was one of your best, most productive receivers last year. Where were these guys?
They got him the ball in the fourth quarter. Was the first time he touched the ball.
Yep.
One time, which is about 9 times too few.
Especially with the game being so close at halftime and the lack of production besides Williams at the receiver room. Why don't you roll the dice and put the guys like Wesco and Moore in? And I get it at first. Georgia's physical. Maybe you want your more experienced guys. But Garrett, like you said, these are guys that we have been told could make impacts from day one, especially Wesco, who's been here since the wintertime. And I wasn't a fan of Randall. I wasn't a fan of Turner. Randall had that early penalty that kind of lost a lot of momentum again.
It killed the drive, dude. It killed the drive.
It killed the drive. So why not switch Randall and Moore and then put Wesco either in the slot or what Turner's playing? Tyler Brown should have got the ball more too. And that interception, I know that was going to Tyler Brown, and I don't think that would have been an interception if it was anybody but Malachi Starks. That was just an incredible play.
That'd have been a catch.
He was double covered. I'm not gonna say unless he was wide open.
Covered?
He was in double coverage. Yeah.
Okay. I
there was a defender on his back, and then Starks was in front of him and made the play.
Oh, okay.
But I thought you should have seen more stuff out of Tyler Brown earlier on as well. He was your most productive receiver last year. He led your team in receiving yards as a freshman, and he was hurt for a little bit of the year too. So for me, there has to be some changes, and Sweeney has said that. He said that Wesco and Moore will probably receive more snaps, but you can't have Cole Turner be second in your snap count. At least it should be Tyler Brown, or it should be, incorporated Wesco and Moore a little bit more in the second half and not just be given garbage snaps when, it doesn't matter. So there's a lot to fix, and I hope that we see more of those two freshmen, and especially more out of Tyler Brown from, what we've seen from him in the past, and see him in weeks to come.
Yeah, no doubt. And, look, maybe the rotation changes, maybe it doesn't, but we would be remiss too if we didn't talk about this as well. And again, something we discussed before we started the show, and we won't harp on it too terribly long. I think it was obvious to anybody who was watching. But Griffin, you had mentioned Phil Mafah. He only had 16 carries, and how it was imperative that he have far more, 20 on the low end, and probably at least 25, because he's such a consistent player. I mean, he's a great running back. He can get you in front of the sticks, which is exactly what we saw on Saturday. How many times did Mafah carry the ball on first down for 5 yards? A couple times he got 6 or 7, and now you're set up in second and manageable or second and short, and then you throw the ball 2 straight plays. Why was Phil Mafah not getting the ball more when it was obvious that he could keep you in front of the sticks and keep drives going?
And remember, this is the guy that they fed the ball to the whole game against Notre Dame, and they won. He had 36 carries, which you don't even see that in modern day. And he only had 16 against Georgia. This was the guy that won you games. This was the guy that helped you go on that 5-game winning streak. He's the reason he has a Gator Bowl most touchdowns scored in a game for a reason.
I was about to say that.
I just don't understand. He did. He won Notre Dame. I could say that he won at least 2 or 3 of the 5 games that Clemson won to finish out the year. Easily. And he wasn't used, which I just don't get. And especially on those early downs, you give him the ball. It's second and short, third and short. I remember there was a 2nd and 1 call and a 3rd and 1 call, and they threw the ball deep twice. Ruined a drive. And I'm not saying it's play calling that should be changed, but you have to remember that your whole offense at the end of last season was Phil Mafah. Cade was more the game manager, and it worked. It fit. I mean, you're winning games. That's really all that matters in this kind of world nowadays. I was just confused by that. I thought Mafah was going to get between 25, 26 carries at least. So it's just a shame for me to see. And Keith Adams and Jay Haynes too. They only got 1 snap each. Also, they only got 1 carry. Also, I just wanted to see more from him. And when we go into App State, I think he'll get the ball a lot more. I think they made a mistake.
Yeah, if they don't give him the ball at least 20 to 23, 24, 25 times, then it's going to be a rough game, I think, unless they play Wesco and Moore. And I don't know, man. I just feel like I said, I preached it to Anthony when we were walking out of the game, and he was like, "No, we should have thrown the ball more. We should have got the passing game going." And I agree, but when your receivers can't do nothing, then you lean on the running game, because he was getting 5 yards every stinking time, at least. And yeah, he only averaged 3.7 yards per play, but that's because you throw it, like you said earlier, you throw him the ball 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage and he loses 5 yards. Like, that goes against his average per play. And so, it's just,
Look, it's football 101. You get the ball in the hands of your best players, and you get them in their hands as many times as possible. It's not a hard concept. And, I'm not going to sit here and say we're the be-all, end-all. We're not the ones making $10.5 million a year to coach a college football team. But at some point, it boils down to common sense, and that is common freaking sense. Yeah. Phil Maffa is your most consistent player on offense. Get him the damn ball. Get him the damn ball.
Yeah, he's your constant. He's your constant in this offense right now. I mean, Wesco and Moore have that, that upside, but it's week one. Maybe they help. They'll come along, and yeah, I completely agree. But this was your guy last year, so why don't you go back to him? I just didn't get it. I just did not get it at all.
Right, and I'll tell you what, we're about to move on, and we're going to talk about this matchup with App State coming up on Saturday. But I do have to throw one more thing in there. And I was sitting there. I was sitting in my living room. I had my best friend over. We were watching the game on Saturday, and I forget his name. So if either of you remember, you'll have to enlighten me. But the transfer receiver for Georgia from Vanderbilt, he caught a touchdown pass in the second half. I swear to God, he reminded me so much of Hunter Renfrow, to be perfectly honest. But I'm sitting here thinking Dabo Swinney will not supplement the roster with the transfer portal. And look, we're not getting up on that ivory tower tonight, but I made a post on Facebook, and I was actually, as pissed off as I was actually proud of myself for the verbiage that I used. And I said, Dabo Swinney says there's nobody in the transfer portal good enough to play for Clemson. Clemson gets torched by a wide receiver transfer from Vanderbilt. I cannot even begin to fathom that level of irony.
And that 40-yard run that he had should have only been about a 10-yard run if it wasn't for the referee, or maybe a 20 run. Wasn't for the ref, because he got blocked.
I'm not going to blame referees here.
Well, I'm not even. I'm not. But if you watch the play,
I'm not blaming zebras.
No, and I'm not. But on that one play, like if you watch the play, he runs right smack dab into that ref. And to our defender, you should have been watching out for that ref. Like you should have gone around him. And maybe you could have cut him off on the backside of the play. But who knows,
the ref should have flagged himself. The referee threw an illegal chop block downfield. The ref should have flagged himself.
Exactly, man. But I'm not making excuses. But the player, our player, should have had his eyes up, and I don't know where his eyes were, but he got torched on that play.
Head on swivel.
It was Venables.
Yeah.
Lord, we don't need to get him hurt again.
Nope.
All right, guys. Well, look, it was a tough one Saturday. I think we'll all agree on that. We may have some differing viewpoints in how we break the game down and what we saw, but at some point you have to move on. You have to turn the page, as Bob Seger would say, and you move on to the next opponent. It's a new day. You live to fight again. And this time you've got the Appalachian State Mountaineers coming into Death Valley. It's the first home game of the season. And it's a Mountaineers program that, aside from the fact that they're a pretty good team in their own right this year, they are absolutely no strangers to big-time upsets on the road. So I think Clemson, it would be wise, it would behoove them if they did not take this Mountaineers team lightly.
Oh, no, and the players know that too. Every player today talked about that. Coach Sweeney has just been preaching to them that this team, they can shock. I mean, this was the team 2 years ago that beat that A&M team, the number 6 team in the country. They gave North Carolina a run for their money last year and the year before that. This is a tough team, and they have heart. They like to play, and they really love an upset. And their quarterback, Joey Aguilar, I like him. I thought he had a great game last week. But there are ways that this Clemson team can win. I'll get to that in a little bit. That's my X factor. But I think that this should be a better game for Clemson in terms of what type of defense they're playing, and if their defense remains constant and plays like the defense that they played on Saturday, I really think that this team will get its first win of the year.
And Griffin, this might have been pre-kindergarten years for you, but I do remember the win in the Big House, too, in 2007. I was watching that one. I was a nationally televised 12 noon game, if I remember correctly. And believe it or not, the former head football coach at Woodruff High School, my school, was actually a quarterback on that App State team that went into the Big House and beat Michigan. He used to tell me stories about that game all the time.
I mean, yeah, that's the type of magnitude you can do. Just remember that for the rest of your life. That's what this Mountaineers team wants to do. But I really think home game at night. Keep that in mind. I really think that this is just the perfect storm for Clemson to get off the right foot and get going ACC play with a win.
Yep, I agree, and I think we can do it as long as we give them off of the ball and get the passing game going a little bit. I just feel like Moffa's the way to go.
Yeah, and look, when I look at this App State team, and I think they're better on the offensive side of the ball than they are the defensive side. And I see some areas and I see some matchups, and Griffin, you can break it down a little bit, but I see some areas where this Clemson offense can get on track and they can really get going against this App State defense. I think if the Mountaineers have any shot to win this game, I would say they need to make it a high-scoring game. They need to make it a shootout because this Clemson offense can do some things that will give their defense trouble.
No, I agree. And I think that starts on the grounds. App State played Eastern Tennessee State last week, and they're running back at 126 carries off of 126 yards off of 15 carries. I really think that, if that's the same story, I think Phil Moffa will have an incredible game. He's my X factor. And I think that he just wants to
You took my X factor.
I apologize.
You took it.
I apologize.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know if great minds think alike, but this is the perfect storm for a great game for him. And I do think that, yes, you're right, App State are better on the offensive side, and they'll probably want to make it a shootout. That probably favors them. I really think this Clemson defense is just too good to force those types of games, those types of shootout games. So I think if you're going on the ground, I think if you run heavy offense first and you use Cade as the manager to get those second and third downs, I really think that this Clemson team will get started, especially offensively, and put some points on the board.
Yeah, I think our defense will be our defense. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm not really worried about our offense really going into this game. I think if I'm gonna call my X factor, I'm gonna go with Tyler Brown, and because I think he needs to get some passes thrown his way and get going, and and then see what happens from there. I want to see Wesco. I want to see Moore. I want to see Williams, and I want to see Tyler Brown. And if Moffa gets going, like you said, and I think that opens the passing game. I think you run to open the passing game. That's the way I see it. And see where it goes from there. I've said that from day one. Against Georgia, and it didn't happen. And so you run to open the pass and see where it goes from there.
Yeah,
but my X factor is Tyler Brown.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, Cliff. And certainly you want to get those guys the ball more. Keep feeding Antonio Williams. And look, like we talked about, this is a great game. It is a great game to get Wesco and Moore lots of snaps. Throw them the ball. Let's see them work against these DBs from Appalachian State. Let's get them in the open field. And look, if it works and you've got these two guys creating separation, running past people, then, as they say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Keep running them out there. And look, at this level of college football, when you get paid this much to coach a team that people expect to be playing at a championship level, there is no room for loyalty just because somebody is an upperclassman. Juniors and seniors who don't get it done shouldn't play over true freshmen who can. So you've got to give these young guys a chance to get it going. I'll even throw this name in there. We didn't see a lot of Sammy Brown on Saturday either. At least I didn't. Where was he?
Nope.
Where was he?
Yeah,
another guy that they said could contribute day one.
Yeah, they said that, and I believe this statement because, what happens if he makes a mistake and it goes for a touchdown, and people are gonna like, oh, we missed on him or whatever. And so that's what I heard. That's what people were saying. Like, and I'm just like, I mean, I don't know, like the way Clemson fans are.
I'm sorry, I don't buy that as a valid excuse for not putting.
I don't.
Who was supposedly one of your best players out there. I'm just.
Yeah,
I
mean,
you're selling that on my mind.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard. So, who knows?
Well, hey,
well, he also had the mic. He had the defensive mic. Him and Bear Carter had it. Those were the only two, and you cannot be on the field at the same time. So that's probably why he didn't see the snaps on the field, because obviously you're going to leave your senior leader, who's an NFL prospect, on the field instead of a freshman against the best team in the country. You'll see more of him. You'll see more of Kobe McLeod. You'll see more of Jamal Anderson, and I'm excited to see them.
Yeah, you'll definitely see in this game.
Yeah, I agree. And I think ultimately, and we'll give some predictions in a second, but ultimately I see this as a game where, look at its very base, I think this is going to be a pissed off Clemson team coming out. And as fans go, I tend to be a little more cynical than most. But, that was part of my ire on Saturday. And it's what I told multiple people. Georgia, I'm not going to sit here and say Georgia might not be across the board the more talented team, but even if you believe that they're better than Clemson, and most people do, they're still not 34-3 better. They're not 31 points better than this Clemson team. I think that group is probably a little bit pissed off. I don't pin it on the defense last week. Frankly, it was the same song and dance as last year. They were gassed. They emptied the tank in the first two quarters. They had nothing left. If the offense couldn't keep them off the field, they had nothing left. And I think once you get into some games where you see the offense be able to sustain drives, move the ball, the defense has to play less snaps. Look, this is going to be a dominant unit. What we saw in the first half is more indicative of what this defense is than what we saw in the third and fourth quarters.
Yep.
Yeah, they both help each other. And like you said, when Georgia began to take over that game and just begin to pour it on, that's when you started seeing the missed tackles. That's when you started to see the missed coverages. Wade Woodaz, Bear Carter, they missed a lot of tackles, especially that got that running game going for Georgia. And that's all just the fact that, yes, Georgia will be able to run you out of the stadium. That's that Kirby Smart type mentality where they're just going to go and go and go until the game's over. But I mean, there's just a lack of motivation when your offense isn't able to put that up and you're down 2 scores and you're kind of in a pit.
And this last week, and the Georgia guy was like kind of pushed back. I said, if we're not careful, a third-string running back will beat us. And what happened?
Nate Frazier, baby.
A third-string running back beat us.
Yeah.
And it was for that reason that I actually picked Clemson to win that ball game coming in. I completely undersold the depth that Georgia had behind ETN and whoever their second guy was. I just did not think that against that Clemson defense that their depth extended far enough past their top 2 guys to be able to be effective against Clemson's defensive front. And I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. Not so much that, and I'm not blaming Clemson's defensive front 7. I was wrong in the fact that Georgia, in fact, does have that level of depth. So kudos to them.
Yeah, they're good. They just running back after running back after running back, I guess. I mean, the list goes on for the last 10 years of running backs that came out of UGA.
I can't wait to get Gideon Davidson on campus.
Me too.
Yeah.
Maybe Clemson needs to build up a little bit of that depth. But either way, I think it's going to be a good night at Death Valley on Saturday. The lights will be on, a night game. We all know how special night games at the Valley are. Light it up. We will rock you running down the hill. It's always just a special scene, raucous atmosphere. So before we wrap it up, let's throw out a few predictions on this game. And are you struggling to get insurance coverage for your roof? Don't let multiple claim denials keep you from protecting your home. Sovereign Roofing is a team of experts who know the ins and outs of the system, allowing us to be your professional guide. With up to 2 inspections included with a denied claim, we make sure your roof is properly evaluated and your insurance company can't deny it twice. From new roofs to repairs and insurance claims, our staff provides exceptional service and ensures you get the best results. Trust Sovereign Roofing for all of your roofing needs in South Carolina. Griffin, I'll let you go first. Youth leads. So what's it going to be?
I appreciate that. I think this game might be a little bit closer, like in the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter than people think. Again, I said my X factor is Phil Maffa. I think he's going to have an 100-yard game. My hot take is he'll have 125 yards or more and 2 touchdowns. I really think they'll find a lot of success. And I think they'll get this offense going. They'll get back to where their foundation was. They'll rotate their wide receiver room a little bit throughout the game. And I think they'll find it with guys like Moore and Wesco out there. And I think the defense holds strong. This App State team is good. They like to put up a fight. But I really think Clemson gets out of here with a 2-score win. I got 31-16 Clemson.
Like I said, I think you start with a run and then get your receivers involved and get Tyler Brown the ball because, of course, he was my X factor. And then involve all the receivers. I think Phil Moffitt's going to have like 3 touchdowns because I just think they're going to feed him and feed him and feed him. And yeah, and so I'm going to I haven't really thought about the score that much, but I see it somewhere in the 30s, at least for Clemson, and then somewhere in the I'm going to say teens. So I'm gonna go 34-13. I'm gonna go 34-13.
And I haven't given my X factor yet, so I'll just drop that in before I give you my score prediction. And for me, I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball for my X factor. I'm going to go the secondary. And I thought you saw some good things early from the secondary and from the back end of the defense on Saturday. But then I think in the second half, you started to see some excuse me, I think you started to see some cracks in the armor a little bit, and some guys getting behind them. Look, we saw how good these guys could be last year. Khalil Barnes, Avion Terrell, and now Jaden Lucas is back, and he looks healthy. I thought Jaden Lucas looked really good early in the game against Georgia, flying to the ball and made some great open field tackles. Yeah. And this is an App State team who can score the ball. They can put the ball in the air. So I think it's up to the defense to set the tone early, turn it over to the offense, and I think that's going to require the secondary having a big night. They'll need to make some plays, some PBUs, hopefully an interception or 2. So I'll look for the secondary to have a big game. That'll set the tone for the defense, and the Clemson offense gets going a little bit more. And Griffin, imitation, they say, is the sincerest form of flattery. So in the Gridiron Guru, which I put my picks in yesterday, my final score was eerily similar to yours. And so I'll stick with it. And it's just like the Price is Right. When somebody trying to get on stage, they bet that the item they're bidding on is $99, and the next person comes along and bids $100. So you said 31.
You got 17, don't you?
Your score was 31-16. My initial prediction was 31-17 Clemson. So I'll stick with it.
All right.
Yeah.
Where's my brand new car? I was close.
Think alike, so.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on the brand new car for playing the places right.
Yeah, I mean, we're all around that same. We're all around that same area.
Yeah, double digit.
So,
Clemson puts up 30 type thing.
Oh, that's why we're the GOAT trio.
Yeah.
Can't
beat it.
We do what we can. All right.
Yep,
well, hey.
Right.
We're 3 days away till the lights come on at Death Valley. We'll see how the Clemson Tigers do against the Appalachian State Mountaineers. Look, it's always good to play our brethren from about an hour and a half, 2 hours up the road up in Boone, North Carolina. So it should be a great game. I'm looking forward to it. Prime time, I'm sure I'll be watching it somewhere with somebody and having a great time as well, especially if the Tigers win. So until next time, for those for the crew at Around the Paw, I'm Garrett Mitchell, Griffin Barfield, and Clifton Kennedy saying so long, Godspeed, and God bless. And as always, it is a great day to be a Clemson Tiger. Goodbye, and go Tigers.
Go Tigers.